And whoa, look at Magoo. Magoo streaks into the...
Thorpe's got past Gabors. They lock handlebars as they go through, but Thorpe's done.
Here comes Bradshaw to the outside of Bale. He takes over the number 2 position, and Bradshaw is not done.
I want to move over to the MXGP side of the house. In 1996, and we all know that story, 1996-97, after Jackie Veman had won the 250 world title on a Yamaha, although nothing about it was stock, he moved to the 500 class, and and Team Yamaha had built this YZM 500. Now, I just did a quick video on it last week, but the YZM 500 was a thing of beauty, and it was, if there was ever a particular one-off, it was this YZM 500. I think they only made 6 of them total, and Jackie Veman had that off-season debacle, which broke a couple of vertebrae in his back, and he was, after he had signed the contract to ride for 1987. The YZM 500 in the 500 class, and they had one prepared for him to do so. They had to find somebody else to replace him because he was out the whole 87 season. And this is what really gets me. So they hire Leif Persson. I'm not sure how to pronounce it in Swedish, but he's a Swedish sandmaster. I mean, if you watched him on those OW 500s, which I have a clip, in 1986, at Markello, he was right there with Dave Thorpe and Giorgio Bay until the neck of his SR 500 broke in two, and Andre Malherbe. I think he got second in that race, all sand. Markello was an all sand track, and he was smoking everybody on that air cooled but ultra trick OW 500. And somebody correct me if it's not an OW 500. I think it is, but YZM 500 air cooled, I guess you could also say. And then you look at also 1986 when they raced in Sweden. He smoked everybody. I mean, everybody. I think in the first moto, and I'm not sure if he won this. I know he didn't win the second moto. I think that was Kees van der Ven that won the second moto. But Leif Persson was a thing of beauty to watch on a sand track on that OW 500. Going into 1987, last minute hire. He was a Yamaha factory team rider in '86. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if they decided they were going to let him go in '87. I'm sorry, I keep saying 90. I mean 80, the 80s. I don't know if they were going to let him go in 1987, but they ended up contracting him to replace Jackie Veman while he healed, and Leif Persson did not disappoint. Leif Persson did a great job on that YZM 500 for being a last minute call, and he ended up giving that YZM 500 its first win at Ruksanta in Finland in 1987, either in the first or the second moto. I want to say either Jackie Martins or Kees van der Ven again may have won the other moto. But that was a huge step in the right direction for a guy that was not considered one of the top 3 riders or even top 5 riders in the mid to late 80s in the 500 class. And he being able to ride that YZM 500 really actually kind of put him up into the top 5 that year. And for all the progress that he made filling in for Jackie Veman, who was injured in 1987, and winning in Ruksanta and doing really well in the Dutch MXGP, that he was up front and led most of it, I think in the second moto. He also did really well at Farley Castle, and him and Kurt Nickel diced it out, I think, Kurt Nickel ended up winning either the first or second moto, and he got second. I mean, he had a ton of podiums that year. And for all the great performances that he put in 1987, Yamaha rewarded him by firing him. And that's what I mean by the horrible decisions that Yamaha made. Now, you'll see every time a lot of times when I comment about things that happened with Yamaha, when I put out a YZM 500 video, and I'll get a lot of comments saying like, I wonder why they didn't keep it. And my answer will just be because Yamaha sucked in the 80s. Their head office, their team management was horrible. They did not make the right decision most of the time. And that would have been likely the only reason why they got only one 500 world title in the 80s, and that was Håkan Karlqvist in 1983. Now, another ridiculous head office move that Team Yamaha had over in the MXGPs had made. In 1988, when Jackie Vimoon came back, he also had several top 3 podiums, finishes, and even won the Malmo Sweden round, the first MXGP round to be won by the YZM 500. He also did well at Luxembourg. He also did well in Italy. He also did well in Switzerland, making the podium in each one of those. And this amidst small injuries that he had to deal with, and coming back from a broken back, which, let's face it, he really wasn't the same afterwards, but he actually put in good performances. And that's probably half because of his great talent and natural capability, and probably a certain percentage of it was he was riding a great bike. But of course, the head office at the end of 1988 decided that they were going to throw the YZM 500 project in the garbage and never returned back to it, which probably was one of their biggest financial errors they could have ever made. The last ride that Jackie Vimoon had on the YZM 500 was at the 1988 Motocross Nations in France, where he actually placed third and was neck and neck with Team USA all the way to the last moto. And so think about that. And I'm not putting him, I would ever put him on the same talent level as Ronnie Lachine, but you had people like Ronnie Lachine, Jeff Lees, Kurt Nickel, Håkan Karlqvist that were all riding that MX to Nations, and he was right up there with him. And aside from it being a beautiful looking bike, they really could have done a lot with it. They had put out, like, even in the United States, if they'd made a production version, the 1988 YZ250 bears a striking resemblance to the 1987-88 YZM 500. All you had to do was take that YZ250, 1988 YZ250 steel frame, jam a YZM 500 motor in their production level bike, and imagine how well that would have sold in 88, 89, 90, until Yamaha decided to get out of the 500 game. I mean, we would be talking about restoring those today instead of restoring like an 88 or 89 through 04 CR 500, or an 88 through 02 or 04 KX 500. So once again, another huge shortcoming in Yamaha's head office. Another prime example of just a great talent in a 19-year-old rider named Jeff Stanton, who signed with Yamaha and began riding as a sport rider back in 1986, and slowly got better 87 and then in 88. In 87, he really made a name for himself because he was a natural on the 500, even though he was racing a YZ490, which let's face it, it was, aside from having, bolt-on or aftermarket add-ons that you could find, anybody could find, it was basically a stock bike. And nevertheless, he was able to get second in the 87 500 Nationals and in the 88 500 Nationals, even with competitors like Jeff Ward, Ronnie Lachine, Jim Hawley, people like that who were older than him, more experienced, and I mean, you don't get much more talented than Ronnie Lachine. And nevertheless, he was able to garner second place due to his consistency, and both times behind Ricky Johnson. He did not see the difference that Yamaha was making to make their bikes better and to give him a shot and really help him develop his talent. Now, a lot of it had to do with the head office. Let's face it, in every sport, if your head office is disorganized or messed up, it's going to affect the players or the riders. It's like that anywhere. Think of NFL, American football. If no matter how good that first round draft pick is as a quarterback, if you throw him into a team where the head office is messed up and disorganized, and he doesn't have the right support around him, he's going to be the worst quarterback out there, no matter how talented he is. And we've seen that happen so many times, time and time again with the riders. In 1988, Yamaha put out a great product, especially their YZ250. It was all new, rebuilt, revamped, newer chassis, and it was online with the 88 CR250, and it was a performer. It was a great bike, and if any of you notice a striking resemblance between the 88 Yamaha YZ250 and the 1987-88 YZM 500, it's not a coincidence. So they had a better bike. Stanton, in his 88 season, started to put out better numbers in both the 250 Supercross and the outdoor 250 Motocross series, because he had a better bike to work with, and he started to get a lot more top 5 finishes. So, but there was still a disconnect there, and he was not getting, he admits, the support that he needed. Now, he had the benefit of being very close friends with Ricky Johnson, and they would train together, they would do a lot together, and Ricky Johnson just kind of whispered to him time and time again, hey, you should really look at coming over to Team Honda, because they have a little bit better product. I would say it was on par in 1988, the 88 and the 89 YZ with the 88 and 89 CR250. They were like, it was a coin flip. But the Team Honda had their act together. They had their team management was squared away. Their head office was squared away. They listened to their riders. And so Jeff Stanton, after, had to make that decision as a 20-year-old, had to leave that kind of security blanket that he'd only known, Team Yamaha, and went over to Team Honda and instantly became a national champion. Now, Ricky Johnson was hurt after winning the first 5 Supercrosses and pretty much having the title in the bag at that point. But make no mistake, Jeff Stanton was second place in the standings and pretty much second place in every single race up until the 6th race of the season, I think in Atlanta, where he actually beat Rick Johnson and was showing and won his first Supercross. And he was demonstrating the difference of what it's like to come to that type of team. Jeff Stanton ended up staying with Team Honda and became a 6-time national champion, won 3 outdoor titles, 3 Supercross titles, and had an illustrious career with Team Honda. And by that time, Team Yamaha, their product was on par with Team Honda's product. And even the RM was a great bike starting in 1989. Even the Cowie starting in 1990 was a great bike. But a lot of it has to do with that head office. A lot of it has to do with that team management. And Honda's team management was squared away. And so there you see another stark difference in going to a team that really listened to their riders a lot more, rather than making their own decisions without giving any heed to what the guy on the ground was saying. And coming from a military point of view, especially in special operations, they are really big on driving operations from the ground up, which means they listen to their guy on the ground. And for 22 of those 24 years, the first 2 years that I was in special operations was all training. For 22 of those years, I was on operations. For 20 of those years, the last 2 years I was retiring. But I never was an instructor, never had to do any time anywhere else. I was operational the entire time. And they take very seriously what the guy on the ground is seeing and what the guy on the ground is experiencing, and what, in this case, what the guy on the track who's riding that bike, who's putting that time in, who is doing lap after lap on practice tracks, on different style tracks, and in competition. They listen to that guy, and that's what a good team management system does. And fortunately, Honda had it, and it probably had a lot to do with Roger DeCoster, who was a 5-time world champion himself and had been through those experiences. I hate to say it, but Keith McCarthy, he did not do things the way that he should have emulated it from the way Team Honda was doing it. Beg, borrow, and steal from their plan. He decided to do things a different way, and it cost them. So we're going to go into the 1989 season, and this young man at 16 years old, Damon Bradshaw, who was smoking everybody as a 16-year-old. There's a pre-race video here that I'm going to put in of him going into the 1990 season. Now, when he was in throughout the 1989 season, he was on a 125, and he raced the 125 Supercross, won the East Coast title, and then he moved over to moved into the outdoor series, and he diced it up with Donnie Schmidt, with Mike Kiedrowski, with Jeff Matasevich, and there were some great races. He ended up losing the title to Mike Kiedrowski by just a handful of points in the last couple of rounds. Now, this probably had more to do with Damon Bradshaw than it had to do with Team Yamaha. Damon Bradshaw, as I saw this term, I was not the one who invented this term, but I saw this term. He was your classic cow, C-O-W, crash or win, and that was his style. It was a crash or win, and let's face it, he was 16 years old. So I think everybody with that level of talent at 16 years old, even today, have that kind of like win at all costs title. If you don't, you crash. I mean, we saw Hayden Deegan do that in his first year and a half. But it was a great way for him to cut his teeth. Going into the 1990 season, when they immediately moved him up to the 250 class, which, going back to team management, I think that was a huge mistake. As a 17-year-old, you don't move a 17-year-old up to, no matter how talented they are, up to the premier class. They're just not, emotionally, they're just not there. Now, that had been kind of the culture in motocross at the time, but if you look back, Team Yamaha had made that same misjudgment with Ronnie Lachine as a 16-year-old, and they had planned to, even when he went over to Team Honda in 1985 as a 17-year-old, 17 or 18-year-old, they put him up into the 250 class in both Supercross and outdoors. And while he was close, he had that kind of cow style, crash or win. And he was not, was in 84, he was not successful. So Team Honda was not too proud to fix that mistake, and they bumped him down. They had him in the 250 Supercross series, but they bumped him down to the 125 series for 1985, and he smoked everybody. Won, I think, 75% of the races, and won what would be his only title on an RC 125. And there was just no competition for him. And then only after then would they bump him back up to when he went to Team Kawasaki in '86. They bumped him back up to the 250 Supercross, 250 outdoor, and then 250 or 500 outdoor series. Team Yamaha should have kept Damon Bradshaw at the 125 class for the outdoor series for 1990. He probably would have won it. And that would have helped him get on a trajectory that would have been much different than the one that he ended up going through. Now, I feel horribly on a personal basis for Damon Bradshaw. As a 17-year-old, Team Yamaha put all their hopes and dreams of winning a championship on this 17-year-old's shoulders. and that cracked him. That broke him, because that amount of pressure, every time you make one mistake, you feel the weight, or maybe it's self-induced, but you feel the weight of that team's success just crumble on top of you. Every time he crashed, I'm sure he was like, well, I just failed the team. And now Yamaha's not going to get another championship going on. I don't know how many years, since Brock Glover won the 85 world title, or 85 national 500 national title. So it was a huge amount of pressure that they put on this kid's shoulders that did not deserve it. Now, everybody think back to when you were 17, and now think about the amount of pressure that you already have, that you see these riders they talk about already having as a young person on a factory team. It absolutely was not fair for them to do that to him. Plus, he had a mechanic that was just, for all intents and purposes, the guy was a douchebag. He was a bully to Damon Bradshaw, treated him like a 5-year-old. Just was not. There were so many things that the way that he treated, I'm not going to say his name, the way he treated Damon Bradshaw was absolutely taking advantage of a teenager, and this as a grown man, to include extortion. So, like I said, going back to it, if your head office, if your team management, and there was no way that Keith McCarthy did not know about that situation with Bradshaw and his mechanic, did little or nothing about it. I promise you that if that kind of stuff had happened at Team Honda, DeCoster would have squashed it in a minute. Somebody would have gotten fired. So, but that kind of management and that kind of responsibility just simply didn't exist over there. And the failures of that being so close of Team Yamaha continued into the 90s. I mean, Damon Bradshaw, when he went up to the 250 class in 1990, this kid, if he was not hurt as a 17-year-old, if he was not hurt during the Supercross series, out of those 16 races that year, I think he was hurt for probably about 4 or 5 of them. And so he competed in 10 of those races and won 5 of them. He won 50% of the Supercrosses he entered in. That's a high percentage for a 17-year-old. The talent was crazy good. And same thing with the outdoor series. He was able to win a number of outdoor events that year, to include, I think, Lake Sugar Tree. And moving into the 91 season, he unfortunately, there was this guy named Jean-Michel Bell, who was a freak, and was easily the fastest rider in the world at that time. And he decided to come over to the United States after smoking the GPs in the 125 and 250 class. And there was just no match for him in 1991. There just simply wasn't. He was so good that he didn't even win an outdoor national, I don't think, in the 250 class that year, but ended up winning the title because of his consistency. It almost seemed to be somewhat of a joke when he would race the 500 class, because I think that was his most talented riding capability came on a 500, and there was no equal to it. And so for Bradshaw, unfortunately, and Bradshaw actually was the only guy that could really go head to head and beat him from time to time. But because of Bradshaw's inconsistency in riding over his head and outrunning his headlights from time to time, JMB is on the record stating, at some point he'll crash and I'll just take the lead, which I guess probably over half of the time proved to be true. So, and once again, that goes back to, hey, having a good team manager, having a good coach, didn't even exist over there. And if it did, it was poor. So then you go to 1992, and I don't know, I guess Jean-Michel Bell was writing a book. And so, I don't know if he was writing a book, but he seemed like, hey, I'm just going to experience all this stuff for 1991, and then I'm done with it, and I don't have any interest in it anymore, and I'm just going to move on with life and try road racing, because that was, maybe that was the next chapter in the book that he was planning on writing. And so 1992 was fair game, and the two front runners, although there was a lot, the field was pretty loaded. The two front runners were once again Damon Bradshaw and Jeff Stanton. Now, John Michelle Bale was there for 1992 because it was in his contract. He had to defend his titles, but you could tell that the passion was no longer there, and he was just waiting for the year to end so he could move to road racing. But during that year, 1992, I was convinced that Damon Bradshaw was going to put the Supercross down on the back. I think of the 16 or 17 races that year, I think he won like 9 of them and still ended up losing the title to Jeff Stanton, who I think only won 3 that year, at the last race in the LA Coliseum, where, like I said, once again, that crash to win style did not work out for him. And, he didn't perform well that last race in the LA Coliseum. However, if he had ridden within his limits earlier in the year, only once or twice, he would have had enough points to cruise to that victory. And unfortunately, he did not have that type of discipline. He didn't have anybody to teach him that discipline. Now, we look at Damon Bradshaw in 1992 and we think, oh, this guy's been riding the premier class for years, so he should have it. But the guy was 19 at the time. I mean, a 19-year-old. Think back when you were 19. Like, I was a danger to society at 19. I had no clue what I was doing. And this guy had the weight of a multi-million-dollar factory motocross team on his shoulders. The next best guy in the pits, nothing against him, was Doug Dubach. They had put all their eggs in the Bradshaw basket. Bradshaw, when he did not win the 1992 Supercross title, and after putting all that, effort into it, I think that kind of broke him.